Hey there, it's Workbench from Workbench Quagmire here with day 36 of our free code camp Python certification in 100-ish days. Um, we have completed our error handling, and now we are going into classes and objects. We're going to tackle probably these first two, or definitely these first two theory sections. We'll do the next two tomorrow. We'll do the build a musical instrument inventory the day after that. So here we go. How do classes work and how do they differ from objects? So in Python, classes and objects work hand in hand to organize and manage data. You build a class to define shared behavior, then create objects that use those behaviors. In other words, a class is a blueprint or template to use to create objects with. Let's look at what classes are and how to use them to create objects. To create a class, use the class keyword, followed by the name of the class, and a colon. Then within the class, you add an initializer along with any attributes and methods. So attributes are like variables within a class and are used to store data. Methods are functions defined within a class and are the actions objects created with a class can perform. Here's the basic syntax. So we have our class keyword, the name of the class, the colon. Here's our initializer. We're initializing our attributes. And then here is a class method, sample method. So class name is made up of the class keyword to create a class, followed by the name of the class, here called class name. It is common in Python to use Pascal case, so just capitalizing the first letter of each word. Convention when naming classes. Define init self name is a special method automatically called when a new object is created. It initializes the attributes of the object that will be created with the class. In addition to that, the first parameter of init is always a reference to the specific object created or used. By convention, this parameter is named self. But technically, you can use any name. Self lets you access the object's own attributes and methods. So self.name equals name and self.age equals age are attributes the object will have. Define sample method, just take self, is the method each object created can call, and then print self name upper is what the sample method will do. In this case, it prints the name in uppercase. If that all sounds like a lot, don't worry. Let's take a look at a similar example of dog class. Speaking of which, you may hear my dog. She's unhappy with something right now. And how you can create objects from that. So we have our class dog. We define our attributes. The dog is going to have a name and an age. And then it's going to be able to bark, which looks a lot like it talking. So with the dog class, you can create an object. Here's the basic syntax for creating an object from a class. So you have the object name, and then you have the class name, and then you complete it with the attributes. You can also call any methods defined in the class from each object. So object.method name. Now let's create two dogs by using dog class as a blueprint. So here's our blueprint. And here's our creating dog 1 and dog 2. Dog 1 has a name of Jack and is 3 years old, and dog 2 is Thatcher and is 5 years old. So then we can call the bark method, and then dog1.bark. We would get Jack says woof woof, I'm 3 years old, and Thatcher says woof woof, I'm 5 years old for the second object. As you can see, we create two dog objects using the dog class. When initializing dog 1, the string Jack and the number 3 are passed, which sets the name and age attribute for the instance. And dog 2 is initialized with the string Thatcher and the number 5 as its name and age respectively. When you call the bark method on dog 1 and dog 2, you can see how both outputs differ and use unique names and age attributes you pass in when creating the object. In summary, between a class and an object is that a class is the template or the blueprint, and the object is created using that template. Also, a class defines what data and behavior the object should have, and object holds the actual data and uses the behavior. You write a class once and you make many objects from it, each with different data. So here's our quiz questions. What's the output of this code? So we've created this dog class with a name. We have the bark method here where it just says name says wolf. So we create an object to my dog by using the class dog and passing in the name Rex. So print my dog.name will print the attribute. So it'll say Rex. What is the special method that is used to automatically that gets automatically called when a new object is created? It's not the create object. It is the init. It's not new. It's not set up. What is the blueprint or template for creating objects? A variable? No. A function? No. A class? Yes. A loop? No. So here we go. Here we go. One down, one to go. What are methods and attributes and how do they work? In the last lesson, you learned about classes and how they act as blueprints for creating objects. Here we will dive deeper into attributes and methods. Let's take a closer look at attributes first and then methods. Attributes are variables that belong to an object, so they hold data. There are two kinds of attributes, instance attributes and class attributes. Instance attributes are unique to each object created from a class, and you usually set them with the init method. Class attributes, on the other hand, belong to the class itself and are shared by all instances of that class. To access an attribute, you use dot notation. Here's an example. So we have our dog class. We have a class attribute, which is the species, and then we have the instance attribute, which is name. So when we print dog species, we get French bulldog. Then we create our two dogs. One of them's named Jack, one of them's named Tom. When we print dog one name, we get Jack. Species is the same for both because it's a class attribute. So whereas name is an instance attribute. Note that you can access the class attributes directly from the class itself, but you need to create an object and pass it data first before you can access instance attributes. Cars are another good example since all cars have a model and color. So here we have the car class, the instance attributes, color and model. Then we create two cars. One of them is a red Toyota Corolla, and the other one's a green Lamborghini Revolto. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Then we can print the car model for each of those and the car color. Methods are functions that defined inside a class. With them, an object defined from a class can perform actions that operate on or modify its own data. You can also access a method with dot notation. For example, dogs can bark. So we can have a bark method in the dog class like we saw in a previous lesson. So there's our bark method. And when we print bark, jack.bark, he will say his name and say woof woof. A car class can also have a describe method. So here we've got a instance method or a class method, that returns the car is the color and model. So when we print car1.describe, we get cars a red Toyota Corolla or a green Lamborghini. So what are the two types of attributes in Python? Public and private? Nope. Local and global? Nope. Instance attributes and class attributes? Yes. Mutable and immutable attributes? No. What is required to access instance attributes? Class name only. Decorators and instance or object class. Object of that class? Yes. And a static method? No. How do you define and access methods? As standalone functions outside a class? No. As variables in a class? No. With special keyword called automatically? No. Um, they are defined inside the class and accessed with dot notation. All right, there we go. So that's a relatively simple section. One of the things that I hasn't talked about yet that you can, I'll just do a quick example here. So I'm going to create a class person, and we're going to have our init. We have to have self. In this case, I'm just going to do age. And so self.age equals age. Oh, that is not what I wanted to do. Apparently I can't hit enter twice. So then we want to define a function, a method called birthday. That was a terrible spelling of birthday. And it just takes self. So we're going to basically call the instance, this on the instance. So in this case, we want self, we want to add a year to the age. So self.age plus equals 1. And we want to return self. So now we can say workbench equals person, and we will say 42 is a good age. And so now we can say workbench dot age. You see it's 42. Then we can say workbench dot birthday. And then when we say workbench dot age, notice we are 43 now. So that's one of the things that methods can do is you can do things like in the car example, change gears, speed up, slow down, apply the brakes, that sort of stuff. So I think it's pretty cool. This is a really cool point to be with Python is these are, if you try to read Python code without knowing a lot of this stuff, you'll see this sort of stuff and you'll be like, what is going on here? Because it's very prolific. You have all these objects in Python constantly where you're just adding things to them, changing things, pulling things from them. So it's a great place to be in our Python journey. So thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I will see you for day 37 where we'll finish these theory sections. See you then.